Alex,
Hey,
how are you?
I'm doing well, and I want to apologize for the reschedule mess up that I caused. That was all my fault, not yours, obviously. So I just want your viewers to know that if they saw the thumbnail, that was my fault.
I
So,
don't think anybody noticed. I just did a little postponement on it, and it was fine. I don't think
okay.
anybody had a problem.
Well, we're
Yeah.
here now, so I'm glad.
Yes,
I'm glad.
indeed. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I'm really happy to see you. Let me see
Oh
if I
yeah,
can get things together here a little
always
bit.
good to see you too. And I
Uh,
guess I can't see much of the chat. I guess it's kind of like top chat on StreamYard. So. But I see a few, obviously you see a few comments and few people that we know and stuff. So that's always good to see. Too Cooley
there.
for Schooly and Kevin and Tri-City Aquatics and EJ and yeah.
Who's Cara Dolan? Cara Dolan works.
Oh,
Thing.
they're somebody who I've seen on my channel. They're a viewer of my channel.
Apparently, because they says, "How was the commute?" Do you know what he's talking about? I don't know what he's talking about.
Maybe the commute over here to this channel.
Maybe. Well, that
It's a
could
long
be.
one in Florida.
Yeah, really. Yeah. Miles and miles. Got a free, let's see, Grenwood says he got a free 25-gallon yesterday. Played in the garden all afternoon. How about y'all? Well,
Yeah,
I'm
I've
gonna
been
I'm gonna take my mic off because
okay.
there.
Sound pretty good still, so
That's better. Yeah.
yeah. I've been getting this giant 5-gallon glass milk jug basically,
Oh, I love it.
and
What
there's
a
a
cool idea.
I took a branch that has Marimo moss ball algae all over it from another tank that's been in there for like 4 or 5 years,
Yeah.
and it's got a bunch of moss at the bottom, so I'm gonna do a deep substrate in it, and then it'll sit a little higher like that. And
Are
I
you
think
gonna
I'm gonna,
put any plants uh, on the top of it, the emergent?
yeah, I think I'm gonna try to do Tillandsia up on the very top of it, and maybe some sundews, and
Oh,
then
yeah.
yeah, and then I think I'm gonna do Val and Hydrocotyle verticillata and like corkscrew Vesuvius, like spiral Vesuvius or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that since it's so tall, And then I
Like,
think I'm gonna put dojo loaches in there, because I can go get them out of the lake, the invasive ones that are around here. So I figured might as well go fish some out of the lake and get them out of the
oh, yeah,
ecosystem.
we've got dojos here as well.
I mean, it's
Hey,
amazing. It's amazing because those lakes froze solid all the way to the bottom, like the ponds that they're
wow.
in. So they must have gone into the mud quite a ways.
Huh.
Yeah.
Oh, let me show you. I've got a collection of ferns. You're talking about such stuff. Oh, if you can see these very well.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Aren't they cool?
Yeah. Did you go out and find those, or did you
No,
get them?
I bought them actually. Got them from my wholesaler. There's a new farm that's doing a lot of these kinds of plants. So I was able to get about a dozen species.
Oh, very cool. That's neat. You're down there in the hub of all the activity.
Yes, and let me say something about this while we're at it. I'm making a move, and the move is leaving Florida. I'm leaving Florida, and I'm going back to Maryland, and this is going to happen within about a month. by the end of June, early July, I'll be back in Maryland. I need to get back to family. I've been struggling here for a while. My health is failing. I can't get around as much as I'd like to, and I'm really more and more feeling the need to be with family. So my brother found a place right down the street from him that I can afford. So I'm going to make the move. We'll see how it goes. My feeling is I'm going to wind up back down here in the winter because I'm not sure what I'll be up there in the winter.
Right. I don't know too many people who go to Florida and then move to Maryland to retire, but
Well, one of the things I'm excited about is I've got on both sides of my family, I've got 300 years of history in that area.
oh wow, that's
So,
cool.
and I really would like to be able to do something with that on my YouTube channel. I want to get out and do a lot of crabbing and fishing. I'm
Yeah.
actually to eat a lot of crabs this summer. I haven't done that in a very long time.
Yeah.
There's some interest, I think it'll be interesting figuring out what to collect. Plus, I think I've got a family member or two who I can inveigle to go along with me and maybe be cameraman and helper.
You got some youngins that you can wrangle into the hobby?
I think I do. I do.
That's great.
So looking forward to that.
Are you bringing your tanks?
I'm gonna as much as I can.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be in the same boat up there. I can't do a lot, but with the cost of gasoline, it's $500 plus one way.
Yeah.
Just for gas. So I can't afford to do that more than one time. It would be $1,000 round trip just for gas.
Yeah.
So I need to bring up what I could conceivably need. I'm even considering the possibility of opening a small shop. I'm going to be in a college town.
And boy, you are never short on plans, are you?
Lots of plans. It's the execution.
Well, that's what makes you an artist.
But is that right?
Yeah.
I got family up there that has fallen in love with Father Fish. They follow the channel faithfully.
Oh.
And I think they're looking for something to do. So if I can set up some kind of a partnership with a couple of them to open a little shop and do what we're doing. Do little tanks, natural tanks with natural environments, and help people set them up or just sell them at a farmer's market.
That'd be interesting to do like 5 gallons or something you could carry that's already set up at a farmer's market.
Yeah, exactly. I've got family that are doing farmer's market with baked goods and crafts.
Okay.
So I can put a couple of things on their table and, see how it goes.
Yeah, that's cool.
And I think there's some serious money in it. I just sold a betta tank, a 10-gallon, here locally, set up for $200.
Wow.
I know. That's what I said. And that's what Grandma offered to pay as a birthday present for her grandchildren.
Thanks, Grandma.
Really? Okay, so here's why I got you over here.
Surprise attack.
Surprise attack, right. This whole business that actually you're the one that started it.
Uh-oh.
Really. The Lasiak thing. And then I jumped on it instantly because it got me fired up.
Oh man, got us all fired up, right?
The latest scuttlebutt, and that's all there is right now is scuttlebutt. There was apparently some discussion among the committee members. It's in committee now, a joint committee of the House and the Senate that are deciding what to do about the massive billion or $1 trillion bill. I don't
Yeah.
know, a $600 billion bill.
Yeah.
Of which the Lacey Act is one tiny little amendment that isn't even being considered. But
Yeah.
apparently it came up in conversation, and the response was, this is too complicated to try to achieve.
That's what I would hope. You know, that was my hope, was that from both sides of the aisle, they would see it as not clear enough and just hopelessly complicated and economically detrimental. But I was a little worried that they just might not examine it, period, you know?
Oh, yeah, right. Well, I think there's been enough noise. We've made enough noise
Yeah.
for it to at least have come to the attention of some of the people who are on that committee.
Yes.
So, you know.
Yeah. And I think we'll have to probably keep up that noise again going into when
and
they
it
vote.
Needs to be done now.
Yeah.
I mean, now is the time to do it. What's going to happen is whatever they decide upon will then go to both the House and the Senate for approval. And it will be approved by voice vote.
Yeah.
Probably without discussion.
Yeah.
And then it will be signed into law. And it's not a bad law. It's a law that ostensibly creates better labor opportunities for American workers vis-a-vis China.
Right, right.
That's the fundamental purpose of the law, which has nothing, of course, to do with tropical fish.
Of course not.
But nevertheless, okay, so here's what's come out of this. In talking about the whole issue of invasive species and then of endangered species, of special fish, of biotopes that need protection, all of this stuff we're involved in. The image of NOAA just presented itself to me, probably because I tend to be founded in such
Epically biblical.
Epical and biblical, right, images. So I decided to do a series of conversations with people like you who have a fairly extensive, fairly well-developed tropical fish hobby. And it doesn't have to be just fish. It can be any kind of animal. But right now we're doing fish. And
Sure.
Talk about it as NOAA, as what we're doing to protect the fauna and the biotopes, the environments that these animals are living in. Obviously, there are species we're protecting. So it's really an attempt. It's really an attempt to get at the whole concept of a citizen scientist. It is, in fact, citizen scientists who make the real breakthroughs in science over and over and over again because they dedicate their lives to it. Think of how many fish hobbyists you know who have dedicated their lives, substantial resources in time, energy, money, their whole life for years and years and years, studying and developing their skill in being able to maintain tropical fish.
Well, and as someone who is a historian and archaeologist, like that's my background, if folks don't know, the other thing that stands out is how this hobby has always been that way. And, the first angelfish brought to America were by wealthy individuals who were willing to spend $1,700 at the turn of the 20th century to fail 12 times before getting a successful pair to spawn, and to figure out that aeration was key and that CO2 could build up, and so many of the things we take for granted now, it's just amazing how much of it came from these clubs that were, I mean, at the time it was generally wealthy individuals who were these like citizen naturalists, but most of our prestigious institutions and awards and ceremonies and things have their very roots in the fact that, it was a wealthy individual before there was even a field called ichthyology who had dozens of fish at their house and was taking notes.
Yeah, the same is true of plants. I
Yeah.
mean, the fish hobby, the way we've developed it, we talked about this the other day. You and Lucas and me.
Yes.
We're about the only three people on FishTube that are seriously committed to natural systems.
Yes.
There are people who follow us and work with us who are coming along, who are excited about it and doing it. I've got a lot of them. I'm sure you got a lot of them. I know Lucas does.
Yeah.
So we're building an army of of naturalist fish keepers.
Yep.
Who are citizen scientists. I mean, these are people. I see EJ's here. EJ is somebody I'm super excited about. She's brand new in the hobby, grabbed it with both hands, and is shaking this thing for all it's worth.
She's very sweet and very intelligent also.
And she's been at it for about 6 months, a little better than 6 months, and has just moved light years.
Well,
6 months.
The other amazing thing that I've seen is that a lot of people picked up this hobby out of boredom during the pandemic, and a year or 2 years ago now, they got into a community tank or a betta tank or whatever. But now I'm starting to see, unlike I have seen since I started YouTube almost 6 years ago now, I'm starting to see people wanting to breed, the fish that they keep. And I think it's those people that picked up the hobby again or for the first time and have gotten back into it per se, So it's cool to see.
Yeah, they came up yesterday. So I've had a couple of people lately tell me their tetras are breeding. Well, tetras breed all the time.
Yeah.
But if you got healthy tetras in your tank, they're breeding every day. You just don't know it because the eggs get eaten up. And if the babies manage to hatch, they get eaten up. But we need to put together, I need to, you need to, Lucas needs to put together some videos on how to breed these guys and get the babies so you can raise them up.
Yep, I've got I actually just did a video yesterday, came out yesterday, called The 5 Fundamentals of Fish Breeding or Inducing Spawning. And it goes over all the different triggers. I made up a little acronym. The little acronym is FACT, and that's flow, which encompasses water flow, water level, water pressure, barometric pressure, speed, and oxygenation of the speed of the water. And then the A is advanced research. So looking ahead before you get the fish or after you get the fish, but before you spawn it, figuring out what those parameters are and what time of year it spawns, if it spawns in groups, if it spawns on sand, if it needs a cone, if it's a mouse brooder, and just taking care of those preparations. And then C of the word fact was chemical. So the chemical inducing are hormones like estrogen or pheromones, or even just the TDS going up, and that's a signal that the dry season's peaking and coming to an end. And then when it suddenly drops and your pH goes back to neutral instead of being 5 or something, all of a sudden the fish realize that their little puddles are connecting back to the river, and they need to have babies so that they can repopulate all those areas.
Yep.
And then the last two were temperature, which should be pretty obvious, and then time. So knowing how long each process takes. So just like you were saying, if you're going to do a community tank or a colony breeding tank, you've got the time that it's going to take the fish to spawn or how often they spawn. And then you need to account for how long the eggs are eggs before they hatch, and then how long the fry are either yolk sac bound or little sticky heads stuck in a cave or on the glass. And then when they're free swimming, when they eat larvae, and then finally when they're able to eat whatever their adult, diet would be. But that definitely helps in knowing if you put tetras into a heavily planted tank, after they've been well fed and everything, that after a few weeks, there are for sure going to be eggs in that tank. And if you
Right.
remove all your fish out of any given tank, you'd probably end up with having a hatch of whatever kind of fish were in that tank, if they're anything
Exactly
small.
right. Yep.
Yeah.
Which
And that
is
was
the
one of,
best way to do it. That's really the easiest way to do it.
yeah, that was one of my favorite things to do. About 2 years into the hobby again, when I kind of re-entered it, this most recent time, was just to set up a little 5-gallon tank, have it really well planted, keep shrimping it for maybe a year or something, a shrimp or a betta, but then let that biome develop. And then afterwards, switch out the betta or the shrimp or whatever was in there, and then allow some, 2 apistogrammas or some scarlet batis or whatever it may be to go in there, or a group of 5 celestial pearl danios, and then just let them hang out for 3 to 5 days, and then pull them out and just wait, and you'll end up with something. It's pretty
3
amazing.
days later, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. People don't realize that a healthy fish, particularly fish like the tetras,
Yes.
they're a perfect example. The tetras are breeding all the time. If they're fat and healthy, they're breeding. They may do it early in the morning, but once you see fish kind of targeting each other, chasing each other, they're breeding. Their eggs being produced there. And if all you really need to do at that point is let them go for a couple of days. Now you can take them out and you can put them in a little tank and let them do their business there. If you have a layer or two of marbles on the bottom,
Yeah.
or some mesh screen that's wide enough that the eggs will fall through and the fish can't follow them, and then after 2 or 3 days, take them out. That's the way the fish farmers raise all of their tetras. They get pieces of mesh, like petticoat mesh.
Yeah.
You know, something that's fairly fine but not too fine, so that the eggs will fall through it. They set up little styrofoam boxes with about 4 inches of water. They drape this netting in there, and then in the evening they'll put a half a dozen fish in 100 of them, and 24 hours later they take them out, and 24 hours after that they've got babies in there.
Yeah.
What they do at that point is they wait until the babies are free swimming, and then they dump them into a big vat that they'll haul out to a pond, which has been specially prepared with microscopic life, and they dump them all in the pond. And they'll raise 10,000 to 100,000 fish that way. And it's just a real simple process. It's not complicated. It's just a matter of getting all the moving parts together so that you're doing it routinely.
Yeah, and the other thing that I've been telling people that seems to either surprise them or click with them, and they're like, "Oh, that's a good idea," but maybe they haven't thought about it. And it just came to me recently was I was trying to figure out, what is it like someone asked me, when is a tank seasoned versus cycled? Like when is it ready?
Yeah.
And it's not a set date or time. It really depends on how you're doing the tank. But when there is food for the fish as adults, little snacks like seed shrimp, ostracods, daphnia, scuds, whatever they may be, when there's food for them as adults and there is food for their babies in plentiful supply, it's very key for most of those little nanofish. They don't even need to be eating the planaria or the paramecium or whatever it is that they're going to eat that's a small thing. They just need to see that it's there, because they're not going to waste the calories and the energies required to have babies unless they think that there's food for the babies and the babies will have a chance of surviving.
That's exactly right.
So somebody who's compulsively gravel vacuuming their tank and scraping all the algae off the glass and, wants it spotless, that's not a tank that is conducive to growing out those babies in. You might be able to trigger a spawn and get them to lay eggs in there, but then you're going to have to add all those little foods and things yourself. And so while that is the dominant way that fish breeders have done it for a long time, the sterile kind of production line thing, I find it much more satisfying to create a habitat that just takes care of the fish on its own, and I don't have to.
Babies can thrive in, right?
Yeah, that I don't have to worry about feeding 5 times a day or that kind of thing. So that's
where
my
this whole idea of a resurrection jar came from.
Yeah.
Going out into the wild, into nature, collecting a bunch of rotting leaves from a pond or a creek, putting them in a jar, setting them on the window ledge, and watching what happens. Now, when you begin transferring that into your tank, you're creating a food web. You're creating an environment in which there is a full chain, a full web of food that everything in the tank can thrive on.
Yeah. Well, and I did another series that's still a big mess, much to my wife's chagrin, right here next to me. But it's what I did is I looked at different filter samples, different substrate samples of tanks from 3 weeks, 3 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years old, and compared the microscopic life that was in each one. And the interesting thing is that when you get past the 2 or 3 year mark, depending on the tank and size and all that, you start to get life in there that is so diverse. So like in the first year, even, you might get 1 or 2 types of algae, and you see a lot of it under the microscope in just a sample. Well, by 3, 4, 5 years into a tank, you start seeing 10 or 15 different little species of algae. And yet your tank, when you look at it, may not have any algae. And that's because that all competes perfectly the way it evolved to. Nobody can take over because everybody's equal in trying to take over. There's no monoculture that moves in. Whereas when you start a new tank, it's very, very common, and people get frustrated when they get that first algae bloom as their nitrates start, growing for the first time.
So it's important to bring as wide a variety of microscopic life into the tank at the very beginning. provided you have a foundation that can support it.
Yeah.
A bare tank is not going to support it.
Yeah. And the other thing I would add is if it smells like a rotting animal or something, like a very gross smell, that doesn't mean it's necessarily bad, but I would definitely go with something that smells more like earth, soil, mushroom smell, like if you're using dead leaves and mud kind of thing, because that's a lot more balanced of a system rather than a layer within a bigger system that happens to have a bunch of sulfur, methane, and other, chemicals and compounds in it.
Yeah, exactly. There's another element there. I think it's important. Inevitably, at some point, this tank it's not going to, it's not a foregone conclusion, but it can crash.
Yeah.
It can happen. And the question then is, what do you do when it crashes? And the best advice I've been able to come up with is to sit back and watch it for a week. If it stinks so bad you can't stand it, do a water change, pull some stuff out. But if you leave it alone for a week, it will reestablish itself. Whatever it is that's thrown it out of balance will be brought back into balance. If you don't have an air stone or any kind of moving water, put a sponge filter in it. Put an air stone in it. That'll get it moving, and it'll allow the water to come in contact with the surface, so you get a CO2 O2 exchange, and it'll straighten itself out. It absolutely will. The foulest tank will straighten itself out in a matter of a week or less.
Well, and a video I did about a year ago that was really fun to research was, why does my tank stink? And it was going through all the different chemicals that are created and what creates them. Some are made from fungi breaking things down and actually fermenting things. Some are created by bioaccumulation within a bacterial colony. Some are nematodes and little protists that are in thick colonies and biofilms that then get compressed into a layer as they die over hundreds of generations. But for the ultimate thing that a lot of the rumors that have gone around over the years, like bubbles coming up from your substrate, like sulfur or methane, could kill your fish. It's just not true. Those bubbles are moving far too fast, and the water tension holds it together. So it just goes up and out of your tank, and at worst, it may smell kind of funny, certain chemicals and compounds.
Right.
And that's the worst of it. So, yeah, just leaving it alone is the hardest thing for a lot of new aquarists. A lot of people want there to be a chemical or a packet of something that they add, and that makes all their troubles go away and resets things.
Well, right, and there's, I think there you put your finger on what you and I and Lucas and a few others are doing here, which is creating an alternative to the chemical system.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you to show us some tanks.
I was going to say, you guys know what my mug looks like. I figured I'd just put some pretty fish on the screen while we chat.
Talk about this tank.
So this is a community tank that has around 60 species of plants in it from all over the world. So it's not a biotope by any means or anything. It gets CO2 every other day. And then the tank I have over here gets CO2 on the off day. But a very low amount for how big this tank is, if you see that. But I guess it would be considered a high-light, high-tech tank. And then up here, we've got basically an island of wood and emergent growth beginning. And we've got flowering, which is just beautiful right now. But we've got flowering little red root floaters.
Gorgeous.
And the roots are as blood red as I've ever seen.
That's really nice.
And and we're starting to get more emergent growth here, and with the wisteria and water sprite coming up, the bulbitis ferns are growing up out of the water finally. And so I need to trim this back again. This grows so quickly, I need to trim it every 2 weeks or 10 days or so. But
Now, what do
it,
you do with your trimmings?
so usually I pass them on to aquarists in the local club that want them. Sometimes I sell them to the shops. But usually this tank has quite a few rare ones, like this red Mayaka or Rotala Ini sunset, the uh, the Ludwigia ex lacustris, which is a native plant that only exists naturally in 2 lakes in all of North America. This is a beautiful little plant, and it only exists in a lake in Appalachia and a lake in New York. And it is a Ludwigia and a lacustris species that that must have pollinated one another, had the seeds that were viable, and then it's not able to reproduce by flowering or going to seed. It's only be able to reproduce by pieces breaking off and reestablishing. So it's only really established in a few different parts of a few different lakes and parts of Appalachia, and that's it. And so that's what it's kind of magical, is to get these species that are literally they're not going to exist if they die in those lakes, And
Right.
to me, plants are just as crucial in that sense as fish. Maybe not quite as urgent, because you can kind of clone plants and do things a little bit more with plants. But again, like, here's a morph of this is a Aponogeton crispus red,
Oh, that's nice.
and it's
I've not
just a
seen that one. That's pretty.
it's just
Yeah.
a beautiful plant. And I mean, really, the stream doesn't do it justice, but it's a beautiful burgundy kind of ruby color that lights up. And then again, I've got a moss, this little moss that's from um, the island is called Uinca, and it's a little island off of Taiwan, but this moss is native to it. So there's just, there's little gems. To me, they're little gems.
You bet.
Uh, and over here we've got some Homolomena species that are in the dark, and some Lagonandra meboldii silver powder, which actually looks like it's been painted with metallic paint or sparkles. And that's from the island of Borneo. And it's a mutation that existed, but then humans have selected for it to keep it going. But it's something that you wouldn't ever see unless you went to this one corner of one jungle where that mutation occurred originally,
Exactly.
and it's
Exactly.
been brought out. And so that's just one tank. In here, we've got pretty common fish. We've got angelfish and glass tetras. We do have some of the phantom tetras, but these are where'd they go? The Corridora venezuelana are probably the rarest variety of fish in here. They're not super rare or anything, but they are a recently discovered species the last 5 years or so. They are the same as the emerald or bronze cory. They say genetically, but they've been in a different river stream for probably thousands of years, probably tens of thousands of years. And now they're bright orange and blue colored corridoras, which is quite unusual colors for them. But they spawn in this tank all the time. And the angelfish and the other cories in here, and then there's leopard frog plecos. There's 5 of them in here. They all tend to eat the babies, but every time they spawn, usually 2 to 5 babies survive, and I'll take a couple out as they grow. And then over in here, this is a tank I'm resetting, but again, it's a shrimp tank that's gonna have varieties of Silhouette shrimp in it because I finally found someone who's got those. But let's go into the other room where I've set up a tank that is literally a lake that's about 30 miles, 40 miles long and only 12 feet deep. And except for a pleco that's in here because he's eating algae, this is what that lake would look like. There are 9 species. This is Lake Inlay from Myanmar. And there are 9 species of fish in here. Some you'll definitely recognize, like the celestial pearl danios that are in here and the glow light danios. These glow light danios were wild caught, and they have an incredible amount of color compared to the ones you typically see in the trade that are bred in ponds. I mean, these are bright orange and purple with all sorts of crazy stripes and glittering iridescence. They're just an amazing.
In the back. Is that a little badass back there?
Oh, they're these are little they're the thick-lipped gourami, and
there's a little tiny fish in the back.
These little fish.
Yeah, what is that?
So there's a celestial pearl danio and then an erythromicron. So there's the emerald dwarf rasbora and the celestial pearl.
Nice.
And there's also rosy loaches in here, and if I can get it to come out, I'll try to get the Lake Inlay loach, which is extremely interesting and cool looking. But all these plants, also all of 14 species of plants are native, other than this one random Anubias that I just have grown.
Nice.
They're all native to that one lake.
Myanmar. Wow.
Yeah, and
there's a lot of stuff in Myanmar that has never come out. There's new stuff that's beginning to become available.
And I mean, people who are new to the hobby might take for granted that celestial pearl danios and a lot of those micro rasboras we see are common in the hobby, but they were only discovered in 2006 and 7.
Yeah, they're pretty new.
58 of those species came out of Lake Inlay. And every species in the lake either has yellow, orange, and red color to it, which is really interesting.
Huh.
And the lake is very high in carotenoids, so naturally.
Gourami.
Yeah, the gouramis are just beautiful, and they're a very peaceful variety of gourami that only gets about 1.5 to 2 inches long. Yeah. I highly recommend them. They're hard to find, but they're called the thick-lipped gourami or the Trichogaster libosa.
Right.
And they are just a lovely fish. The ones from Lake Inlay are a solid orangey peach color to dark red, depending on their mood. And then the ones that live in the Irrawaddy River and the drainage of the lakes around there actually have dark red, almost brown or purple stripes on them. So these guys are unusual in that the ones trapped in the lake kind of evolved on their own. And then this little dotted female here, that's a rosy loach, which also exists elsewhere in Thailand and Myanmar. But the ones in this lake, when I show you the male, you'll think, wow, that's a beautiful little fish. And this is the full size they get. I mean, this is my pinky finger. They're not much bigger than the nail or the last digit on my pinky finger. But let me try to scare some of the fish out of the plants and get some of the males out. So there's a male back there, and they change on the rosy loach. They change from champagne all the way to blood red. And then this is the red-tailed Lake Inlay loach, and this is a female. She's real skittish in the day. At night, let's see if we can get her settled. At night, she's a lot more brave, but these fish are really interesting because the males actually have a crooked spine, and every single male in the species has it. There's some more of those little rosy loaches.
Right.
They're just beautiful, though. And
Wow.
the
Nice.
crooked spine is probably a little defect that happened because the lake's been cut off. They think by a mudslide around 600,000 years ago that turned the lake from a river into a lake.
Huh.
And so, I mean, some of our favorite fish in the recent hobby, red neon rasboras, scissortail rasboras. I mean, a lot of these fish, the erythromicrons and the celestial pearl danios, the glow light danios, all of them are from there. And it just goes to show you, though, that now that lake is threatened by pollution and tourism, and there's a civil war in the country, and we could lose all of it. That's also where the orange rummy nose rasbora comes from, too, the Sabua resplendens.
Well, that brings the conversation full circle, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So it really is up to us to maintain these species.
Yes. I mean, if it weren't for there being an interest in them, basically the lake would be completely at the whim of tourism. And if it gets too popular, the fish are all going to die. If it's not popular enough, there will probably be conflict in the area, dumping of agricultural waste into the lake, which was happening from the 70s onward increasingly. And that's just one lake. This is one lake that has an incredible amount of biodiversity, but the bottom line is there's a lot of places we just haven't discovered yet or haven't
Exactly right.
inspected.
Yeah.
And I mean, just the other day on a river that is obviously well known, the Amazon, they found 2 new species of darterfish.
Yeah.
The first of any new darters found since 1965.
Yeah, and they may be living in an area that's no bigger than an acre.
Right.
The
Yeah,
entire population.
that particular darter species actually, they said, only lived in 1.5 miles of a creek system. That's it.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's just so sad. I mean, we discovered 212 species of freshwater fish last year alone,
Right.
and we lost 80 that we know of. And that when we say we lose them, that means that it's been 10 years since anybody's seen them in the wild.
Right.
And yet, like Mexican goodeids and things like that, a lot of them have been extinct since the 60s and 70s, but they exist in the hobby. They exist in people's basements for the last 50 or 60 years. And in some cases, they've even reintroduced them when they fix the environment again.
Well, that's exactly right. And of course, that's happened with a lot of different kinds of animals.
Yeah, I mean, and then down here, I've got a colony. This is, again, filterless, no heater or anything either. And we've got glow light danios in here, but then also what we have is a species of apistogramma that don't have a Latin name that were collected on a trip by a friend of a friend. And I'll grab the other colony that at least it has a river name associated with it. But these are just a beautiful fish when they're spawning. I don't know if they will be today, but these are the Apistogramma kaite river. And Ivan Mikolji pictured these in 2006, and they were deemed a new species. And then nobody ever saw them again until this year when somebody imported 12 pairs of them. And I got, what would it be? 5 pairs of them. And they are, I mean, when they're spawning, I've got pictures up and video up of this specific fish. Here's a female. They get bright neon yellow and they start getting blue on them. And they actually resemble, it's funny, the Ukrainian flag. They've got blue and yellow. And so I just find it funny with everything going on in the world that they happen to.
Really.
But they're a very small apisto. Those are full grown wild caught, and I mean, here's my knuckle. They're not even
Not an inch.
like the biggest male is about the size of my knuckle.
Huh.
So that's an interesting fish. Here we've got some more fish, and they're all going to be scared. But here is a nano fish that is threatened out of Africa, the ember tetra, or not tetra rather, ember barb. And they're one of the smallest fish in the world. They only get to about 1/2 inch to 3/4.
Yeah.
And then the other interesting story here is this little guy. These little guys may not look like much right here, but these are called Somfong rasbora. And these were deemed extinct in the 1970s, this little group of fish here. And they have iridescence on them. One streak, they have a streak of black, and then they have iridescence that could be any color you could ever imagine, depending on the angle.
Wow.
And so they look kind of understated unless you catch them in natural light just right, and then they are just an incredible fish. But these little fish were considered extinct in the 1970s, and a German ichthyologist is who discovered them living in the sewers of Bangkok. They had come from they had come from a native river, and they connected to the sewers and decided probably they were eating there because the algae concentration was high. And just like in this tank, I keep an algae layer at top so they can feed off all the little organisms in there. And these little guys, though, in 2006, someone working at Aquarium Glaser in Germany said, "Oh my goodness!" In a shipment of 10,000 Harlequin rasboras, they noticed one of these.
Huh.
So they went through the entire order and they found 3. They found 2 males and a female, and
Wow.
literally the entire species has been brought back from the brink with a male and a female, well, 2 males, but really a male and a female in Germany. And now in America, I've been able to get them, and now I'm breeding them. And it's just pretty amazing. They're even talking about now that Bangkok has cleaned up a lot of the main rivers. They used to just dump the sewage straight into those rivers and whatnot. Now they've kind of stopped doing that, and now they're talking about reintroducing them back.
Nice. That's exciting.
That's another one in my arc. Another one is the Valenti gourami.
Oh, I've got some here.
Yeah, they're a beautiful fish. And then we've also got the Somfong, not Somfong, sorry about that. We've got the Borneo spotted loaches.
Right.
The dwarf ones, the hillstream loaches. And then we've also got the Scyphedon loaches, which are constantly spawning for me, but unfortunately their babies need salt water to survive.
Oh, really? Huh.
So I have thought about bringing them to saltwater tanks that my friends have, but I've just read reports online that it hasn't worked too well.
Well, you need to set up your own saltwater tank.
Yeah, I have read that in Germany somebody was able to do a brackish water tank and get about half the babies to survive.
Oh, that's cool.
So I'm going to try that. And then the last real rarity in here are these beautiful fish. These are called Enigmatochromis. Let me move this out of the way.
Yeah.
Lukonzai. And they're from Guyana, and they look like crebensis kind of, but they have at least 500,000 years separating their genetics from the crebensis. So they're actually more related to some of the fish that are up in West Africa than the other crebensis that are there. But
that's interesting. Yeah.
She's a beautiful one. They're not in spawning color at the moment, but when they are, you get beautiful blue and purple and all these little patterns. And yet again, I do have a video of them, but they're little cave spawners, and so I hope to spawn them. This is another little, they call it a glass shark, but it's a little glass catfish, sometimes called the yellow glass catfish, and that's out of Laos. And I had a group of them, and you know, honestly, they didn't do so well. And now I've just got that one, but I hope to get more in the future and try it again. You know, you live and learn. You try and you try to get tank bred ones if you can, so that you're not impacting the wild population.
The Valenti is the best example of that.
Yeah, yeah.
How many times have you tried that?
Oh yeah, yeah.
A dozen times or more.
And then this is the Lamia tridens, which used to be a very popular live bear in the hobby back in the turn of the 20th century.
Yeah, Mexican.
And now it's not well known by the public, really, but it's still a beautiful little fish that gives live birth, and it's a live bear, and I've got it in here with some little guppies.
Nice.
And then also there's the Malchiensis bettas that I have a pair of back in that corner.
Oh, cool.
And then we've got rainbow shiners from the Cahaba River in here, out of Alabama. And we've also got a threatened, it's kind of hard to see. Let's see if I can get it better lighting. But this is a Betta Minipina, and it's probably the smallest. I mean, you might want to say tied with the smallest bettas, but it's not much bigger than a ram's horn snail. It's about the size of my fingernail, and it's full grown. This one's 2 years old.
Wow.
And so I've got a male and a female. Here's the other one down here. And so I tried for a year with them in a tank, but now they're in a community tank, and then I'm going to try them again soon to give them their own space again. But they're a beautiful blue and red when they're in spawning color, and they're a very dull brown and easily overlooked, I could tell, you know, in the wild, you'd overlook them. But they do have a beautiful turquoise eye that shows up when the light's just right.
Right.
And those are a great fish. Then we've got some scarlet batis in here, and female scarlet batis too, which is pretty hard to find these days. They're spawning. Also, then we've got a species that has no Latin name still, which is another huge problem, and why this law that they're proposing the amendments to is so bad is because what do you say about the rules when the fish has not been recorded yet?
Right.
There's no way to protect what you can't even have a name for.
That's right. Yeah, that's
and
right.
this is a metallic live bear.
Import it, you can't study it.
Right, and this is a metallic live bear that somebody brought back. Literally, they mailed it back to themselves from Jamaica. Huh. And this one just gave birth. Finally.
Okay. Yeah, I know that fish.
Yeah, she finally just gave birth.
Stated in Haiti.
Yeah, yeah. And then down here, we've got some what are categorized right now. They don't have an agreed upon Latin name either, but right now these guys are called blue lip buffalo cichlids or Ivan Stophi buffalo head cichlids, and I'll try to feed them so that they actually come out and play. But they're an African fish, and
yep,
they're a beautiful one. I love them, and here comes the little female.
Yep.
And then the male, I'm sure will be out in a moment. But this really is my ark. This is my Noah's Ark, you know.
Amen. Absolutely.
And there is the male. Well, one of them. The dominant male's hiding. He'll come up in a second, I'm sure. He's very aggressive, and he guards his nest over there. But there are several males, several females. There's also the cuckoo synodontis catfish, the fire barbs in there. There are some normal Crebensis tinniatus.
Yeah.
There's also a bunch of bettas that I grew.
Pretty bettas.
Yeah, they're pretty nice. And then there's also some babies that I'm growing out from Lake Victoria. There's only 4 that made it because their parents ate them. But the 4 are in here, and I'll show you their parents in a moment. But these are from Lawrence Kent, who actually collected these himself in Lake Victoria at a little site called the Village of Malumgu.
Wow.
And they also do not have a Latin name officially yet. And they've been submitted for with all the info from a fellow ichthyologist, as well as I believe Heiko Blair was one of the folks working on this one with him. But they're trying to get it named, and I've got these youngins in here that are pretty rambunctious, and then the adults are predominantly algae and snail eaters. And I know it's going to be a little dark, but we'll try to see these the best we can. Hold on. And I'm going to take out some of this plant life in here so we can actually see what's going on. I'm going to take out, it might kick up some debris in the water, but this way we can actually see into the tank. So I've got an angelfish hanging out in here, but these are the real rock,
Yeah.
the real rock stars are back in here hiding.
Oh.
And here's the male. He is one of the most gorgeous fish I've ever owned. He's not in spawning color right now, but when he is every color of the rainbow.
Wow.
Completely. You can kind of see a peek of him
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
He's about 6 to 8 inches long, full grown, the males are. And right now, these are just called enigmatochromis because they're an enigma. You know, that's just the group they're giving, the group name that they're calling them.
Pelvic aquarium.
Yeah, and then here's like a female. Oh, come on, focus. And then we've got a Siamese algae eater in here because nothing else is tough enough to put up with them other than my meanest angelfish and my Siamese algae eaters is all that can compete with them in my fish room. But they definitely are little rock nest dwellers, and algae, they eat a lot of algae, like a lot of the algae on the rocks. I need to constantly take sticks from this tank with the light on high and constantly be putting in new food, basically. So I'll feed these guys real quick so that male comes up to the surface and you guys can see him.
Nice.
All right, so the male is red and yellow and blue. He's got just about every color you could imagine on him. He's got blue lips. But yeah, this is one that doesn't have an official name. It's probably related to the Hoplochromis of Lake Victoria. But again, it's one that is very under threat because of the invasive species on the lake and all the fishing on the lake.
Tilapia, for example.
Yes, exactly. And I know it's kind of hard to see him right now. He's not being the most cooperative fish, but there we go. There he is. He's a beautiful fish, and definitely trying to spawn him. They have very, very interesting behavior. And I've been keeping a video journal of them just because they are so unique, and only me and Lawrence Kent, I think, are the only 2 people who have these fish right now. So, but they're very frisky and very territorial and play very rough. So I've definitely had to nurse a lot of wounds on them, unfortunately. And then speaking of rare fish that only live in one lake yet again, we've got the Turkana jewel cichlids.
Ah,
And these guys
look
I
at that.
bred in October. Got these from Kenny Edwards, and he got them from Lawrence Kent yet again.
Right.
But they only live in Lake Turkana on the Ethiopian and Kenyan border. And again, most people would say your tank is filthy. What are you doing keeping them in there? Well, this is how they like to reproduce, is in this mulm and algae filled tank. So if I put them on display, I can put them in a different tank. But if I want babies, it's going to be this, you know?
Yep.
And then we've also got some little neon black darters. And what else? We've also got some freshwater gobies in here, as well as the Malawa shrimp, which only lives on the island of Sulawesi. And as you can see, there's 2 pregnant females right there. So I take it pretty seriously that these are, like you said, this is my ark, and these are my creatures, and I want more than just 1 or 2 of every species, you know, of each species I do keep. These are a very common Bickford eye pencilfish, but you can see the females are very, very large. Here, I'll try to get a female in focus. Some are ginormous, and I need to trigger them to spawn with a wet season, like fake them out with a wet season.
Yeah.
And they will spawn probably 30 to 40 babies
She's
each.
full of eggs. Yeah.
Yeah. And then simultaneously, my little water puppy is this Latiacara, and he is a dwarf species of the Latiacara that is from Uruguay.
Yeah.
And he's a beauty. He is a very
That's the
sweet
only
little.
one you have.
I have a female and him. I have a pair.
Oh, you do. Okay.
And he naturally lives with the Bickford eye pencilfish, and also there's some cories in here with them. But yeah, he's another very uncommon fish.
Yeah, they're such a delightful fish.
There are a lot of varieties of these fish, but
right.
he is one of the more colorful varieties when in spawning colors. He has blue and purple and yellow and green and iridescent face mask, and he'll come up
Yeah.
to my finger and actually like eat from my hand, and he's like a little puppy.
Nice.
Now the female is about a fifth of his size and just hides all the time.
Right.
But he's very outgoing and adventurous. You're seeing a tank behind this tank that he's looking at the other fish in. But the plan on this tank is to get these pencilfish, like this big pregnant female who needs to spawn like now,
Really?
is to get them, and then the males are blood red because they're ready to show off for the females. But they're just waiting for that cold water trigger. They're at 84 degrees right now, so they think it's not time yet. So when I do the cold water, though, they'll just scatter their eggs like crazy, and hopefully that will induce a hormone release of estrogen, and then they'll spawn the Laticara species. While it's also out right now, we also have we had the Elosoma gilberti, which I know you have been correct.
Yeah, I'm putting together a shipment for you. I've got the Everglade and
Awesome.
the Perlusa, and I've got the bluefin killies. We're trying to get golden top minnows, and they're being hard to find.
Well, you know, the bluefin killies were one of the main ones were that, and the Elosomas were the ones that I really was pining for.
Well, we've already got those, so as soon as we get some golden top minnows, I'll get that shipment off to you.
Thank you. I'm going to wash my hands real quick just because I don't like to dip my hands into one tank and then the other and then the other when some are African and some are, I work pretty hard on keeping the biotopes separate in some of those tanks.
So
So,
I hope that the folks watching have gotten clearly understand that the only way to be able to maintain this kind of variety and specialty of fish is in the most natural kind of system you can create. You're not going to do it in a bare tank. You're
no.
not going to do it in a sterile tank. You're not
No.
going to do it by adding a lot of chemicals and, stuff from the store that maintain your water chemistry and your balance and all that. It's got to happen by nature's rules.
And the other thing that people don't always realize is that fish don't live a stress-free life in the wild. They go through periods where they don't find food. They go through periods where they're chased. They go through periods when they're in shallow water. And
Yep.
they have a hormonal system of cortisol, steroid responses, just like humans do, that get higher when they're stressed. And then when it comes down, then they realize it's time to breed. But they need that swing. You can't have the sweet without the sour. And so that's something that, is a little bit, it's not beginning fish keeping type information relevant, but it is important for the difficult to spawn species. You need to give them a simulation of that dry season or that wet season or whatever their season is, that is their hard season.
I think maintaining killifish is a good way to learn those kinds of principles.
Yeah, I agree. I think
they need to go through a variety of environments in order to be able to spawn and then for the eggs to hatch.
Mm-hmm. Well, and they have such a complex, depending on the species, you might be talking about they need dry land for,
Exactly.
6 months. They might need water for only an hour to trigger the spawning too. It's very different and unique. And same with the desert gobies.
Yeah, exactly.
And the pupfish as well.
Do you want some pupfish?
What kind do you have?
Golly day. You're making me think now. I can't think.
Are they native?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd probably
it's a bracket fish, but I keep them in hard water, and I have spawned them in hard water.
Oh wow. The one I've also been looking for is the marsh guppy. The marsh, what are they called? The min. They call them Posilia. I think it starts with a P. I'm totally spacing on the name,
Is it a
but
big fish or a little fish?
It's just a little fish. It's like a little live bear. I think it's a live bear. Yeah, and then
the only ones I'm aware of are the Gambusia and the Formosa.
Yeah,
the big one, like.
It's like those, except for, and I think it occurs all the way over into Louisiana and Texas too, like Beaumont. But I'm trying to remember. It might be a killifish, like categorization wise. But oh, you know what it's called? It's the common name is the Cypress marsh killie. That's what it is.
It's a killie, right?
Yeah, and
I've got some here. I think that are about 5 inches.
Oh wow!
Actually, I haven't seen them for a while. I put a grouper in here, and I think it may have done all the mollies and killies.
Oh yeah, groupers are rough on fish.
He was a little grouper at the time. I think
Yeah.
he's a much bigger grouper now.
Yeah. That's
Well,
funny.
I tell you what I'm going to do. Once I get moved, I've decided I'm going to break everything down.
Okay.
I'm going to set all my tanks up. I'm going to video every tank as I set it up and just go through the process of completely building a new fish room with new tanks.
People would love that. I mean, I've had people ask me, do you have a video showing when you moved your tanks too? Like, that's a question I get all the time. And my video is very limited because when I moved, the last thing I wanted to do was film while also having to set up tanks. I moved in the winter, which was a bad time to move fish tanks when it was literally snowing.
Yeah. I think the only fish I'm going to take with me are these Uaru.
Oh, cool.
I've got 6 of them. I got discus, but I got somebody else I'm going to give the discus to. And I'll take some little fish, but most of what I have is pretty easily replaceable. And I want to do natives up there. Want to see what's up there. And I really want to get into brackish.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to be in the Chesapeake Bay.
I was going to say that Chesapeake.
Sticklebacks and
yeah. The Chesapeake Bay has some beautiful fish native there. You get, who was it? It was Alex from Tank Tested. His channel went and filmed a guy it was either Maryland or Delaware, but it was the Chesapeake Bay aquarium. And it showed they have a new exhibition where they had a oyster shell biotope.
Oh, nice.
And it was like mud flats and oyster shell, which I thought was really cool.
Right.
Very interesting stuff.
But there's a serious effort now on the bay to save the bay by substantially increasing the oyster population.
Yes, yeah.
And they think that might be the real key, because the bay has lost its plant life. At least the upper bay has. I'll be getting down to the lower bay, so I'll be able to see what's there. I know there are algae there, but there should be plants as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that estuary is so important for any big bay, is to get that mix, that riparian zone. Yeah. Well, I want to thank you also for having me on the show. I appreciate it because
this has been great fun.
Because I always appreciate, when I like when you have other people on the show too, and I get to watch episodes of the unusual fish that fish keepers are keeping, or the ones that are potentially threatened, or it reminds me that the joy of keeping a fish, there's also a challenge in it, and that's all selfish. But then the selfless part is giving them back for the CARES program, or passing them on for free, and getting another younger person or someone new into the hobby,
you bet.
To keep the lineup, like making sure there's someone who's excited. Even if you lose the excitement over that species, find someone who is excited, pass it on, and tell them to do the same. And you want it to spread like a game of telephone. And hopefully, if we all do that, we'll have, like Noah's Ark, one of every, species that we need when most of them are gone in the wild.
Right. Well, one of the things that I'm going to be doing once I get things moved and situated is really get back to basics and see if I can find ways to reach new people coming into the hobby and provide them the resources to be able to do to have this kind of experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, to me, there's so many people that can afford to set up an aquarium in the backyard or a tub or one aquarium with a simple filtration, but they can't afford, a big aquascape tank, or maybe they're a teenager or somebody on a fixed income, it's expensive, and the corporations have made it expensive, and it doesn't need to be. And there's so many little tricks and tips to keep things affordable so that you can keep fish on a
Yeah, that's
budget.
right. And the reality is, if you do it naturally, you're going to have more success.
Yeah, yeah. Is that an oyster?
No, it's a piece of apple.
Oh, I thought you were
Eating
I
an
thought you
apple.
were a master shucker and you were just getting ready for Maryland again or something.
Won't be long. Thank you, Alex.
Well, thank you so much, Father Fish. I appreciate it. I appreciate everybody tuning in, and we'll have to catch up again soon. And when you get settled, we'll definitely have to catch back up, have you on the show, or
You bet.
I was thinking about doing a game of fish trivia with a couple different YouTubers, thinking that might be fun. And,
Wouldn't it?
yeah, so I'll keep you posted on. I'll keep you posted if that
But my old
unfolds.
brain doesn't work all that well.
Well, I have a lot of harebrained ideas that never actually happen anyways, so don't
It's
worry
a
too
nice
much.
idea. Love it.
All right. Well, take care and have a wonderful night. Thank you.
You too. Thank you for coming up. Good to see you.
Yeah.
Good
take
night,
care.
everybody. Bless you all. See you all. I'll be back Friday. I'll be back Friday with EJ. Friday evening at 8:30. We'll see you all then. And then Sunday at 5 o'clock with Mary Page. Bless you all. Wonderful to be here. Good night.